I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Okay. And I think I bring a different voice to our council.
Okay, but there's definitely a what's the other side to that. Thank you for joining us again for our latest episode of Movers and Shakers. Today we have a bit of a different episode. We have a very special guest joining us today, Ward Councillor from Niagara Falls, Lori Lococo. Thank you for joining us today, Lori.
Thank you very much, Charlie. I'm really appreciative of your time, and it's really exciting to be here.
I appreciate you coming in and giving me the time.
Thank you.
So we're going to jump right into a few quick questions. The first one, I think, just to add some context, is why did you want to serve as a city councillor?
Well, thank you for the question. I am a city councillor right now, and I am running for re-election. So today you're talking to me as a candidate.
Okay.
And a little neat story. I was really afraid of public speaking, and I heard about an organization called Toastmasters. Went to that organization, and I spent 15 years in it. I really stayed for the leadership part of it. Toastmasters is a communication and leadership organization.
Okay.
And I liked the leadership, and I decided to run for the position of international director. It was an elected position. It was a 2-year term, and we were serving 250,000 people around the world. I finished my term, and then I thought, what am I going to do now? I could continue on with Toastmasters. That would be about another 5-year commitment, and it's all volunteer. Or why don't I serve more locally? And when I decided to do that, I looked at city council, and I thought, I've lived in Niagara Falls all my life. I was born here. I often serve the community in many different ways. Why don't I continue to do that? And I decided to run for city council in 2014. We're in an at-large system. We don't have wards in Niagara Falls.
Okay.
You run, and the top 8 vote getters get in to be your council.
Oh, okay.
And I came in number 9 in 2014. I decided to attend meetings for 4 years just to find out what was going on in our community, to see the dynamics about our council, and I wanted to run again. I wanted people to know that I was serious about it. I wanted to learn, and then I ran in 2018 again, and I was successful to get in then. But the reason why I want to serve our community, I think I have a voice and a different perspective than a lot of people at our council.
Okay.
I've always said that if you have a board, a committee, a council, you should have different people sitting around the table.
I agree.
Because if you're all the same, you're going to be
Yes.
thinking about the same types of things.
Yes.
And I think I bring a different voice to our council. Some of the residents that feel they're just normal residents that are not business related or tourism related, they want a voice, they want to be heard. And I think I bring that voice. I'm not saying that business or tourism is not important. We need to take care of that.
Sure.
We're a tourism city, but I do feel that I bring that voice.
Yeah, that's a great answer. A couple things there. First is, so my intro is totally busted, obviously, because I thought we had wards. Obviously now we don't in Niagara Falls. And is that all of Niagara that's like that, or just Niagara Falls?
Just Niagara Falls.
Okay.
We were a ward system. We used to have 12 wards.
Okay.
And Niagara-on-the-Lake is also an at-large system,
Okay.
but the rest, actually Wainfleet is at-large as
Okay.
well, and the rest of the 9 municipalities are wards.
Yeah, it shows. I mean, and I kind of follow it, so it shows you how little even the average person might know. But something else that stuck out is, yeah, I completely agree with diversification in representation. It's something that's very important in our society, especially in Niagara. We have an incredible melting pot of European and Asian and Indian cultures and ethnicities and beliefs. So having many different voices on every council, I think, is something that's very important. So I completely agree with that point.
Yes.
We have a couple topics that we have spoken about briefly before that I think are really pertinent to you and I sitting down and speaking. Obviously, being that I'm a real estate agent, and my passion, the reason I got into real estate is because I really like helping people. It's something that gets me out of bed in the morning. I enjoy helping people achieve their dreams. And for some people, just having their own place to live is a dream. So that's some work that I'm doing behind the scenes with local charities and local community outreach programs. But you can shed some light on this from a different perspective, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on. So we often hear the term affordable housing. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. It started off as a term in the social services sector, and it was that you would spend 30% or less of your income on your housing. And that was often with a fixed income, whether that was Ontario Works, ODSP, Old Age Security, or CPP. Spend 30% or less of your income on housing. And that's what people thought affordable housing was. People used to think it was for poverty.
Right.
That's not the case anymore.
Right.
Affordable housing now, and there's so many different implications. It's at federal, at provincial, what's going on in the economy. Affordable housing now means two people working 2 and 3 jobs each and still not being able to afford a rent, let alone purchasing a home.
Yeah.
And it's so challenging right now with all of the different levels of government. How can we achieve that? So affordable housing in that perspective is people working. It's not poverty, it's just people working. And how can we get to that point that it could be affordable to rent and home ownership?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. We see it all the time in what we do. So even though most people think real estate agents just do buy and sell houses, or investment properties. And while, yes, that is true, we also do a lot of things like leasing, where we're helping homeowners that have either a house where they've duplexed it and they're looking for a quality individual to lease the other side of that house or apartment in that house. We do a lot of business with people like that as well to help them find and do the pre-qualifications for them. And that's something that we're seeing on our side is there's highly qualified individuals that can't find a place to live.
Yes.
That you're seeing people pool together now just to have decent places to live. There's definitely an issue there. I wouldn't necessarily qualify it as a crisis like we hear all over the place. I don't know, that word gets thrown around a lot lately, but it's definitely a problem, and it's definitely something that is prevalent right now in our current society and in Niagara.
Yes.
So what can the city do to bring affordable housing?
There's a lot of different things that we can do. One of them we have been working on, the City of Niagara Falls has been working on, is donating land for affordable units. One of the properties is on Park Street in Niagara Falls. It used to be the old market. The old market on Park Street behind Queen Street.
Right.
And we have donated, the City of Niagara Falls, I am a candidate, the City of Niagara Falls has donated it to the region, and there will be, I'm sorry, I can't remember how many levels, how many stories, but it will be 20% of affordable housing units. And that's really wonderful, because not only we would like to revitalize the downtown, by doing that, when you have people live down there, then more things come down there. You get grocery stores, you get entertainment and restaurants. That's one way. Another thing that the city did was we donated the core building on Victoria Avenue and Armory Street. It used to be an old library, and it was donated to the region for a bridge housing. And what that is doing, it's looking at people who are chronically homeless, and it's working with the individuals to provide them resources, whether it's addiction, mental health, other resources, and it's a bridge. So they're there for a period of time. They work on with the different resources, and hopefully they could move on to the next level. And I wanted to talk to you about a continuum of housing. One of the things that the city also does is help with warming and cooling stations. So that's really a continuum of housing. It's on the one end of the spectrum to home ownership on the other end. But if the city donates resources for warming and cooling stations, that's the first part of the continuum. Then there could be an overnight shelter. We've had an out of the cold overnight shelter. And then there's different programs that people could utilize during the day. Then you go to a small apartment, a leased or a rented apartment, and then maybe lease or rent a larger home, and then home ownership. So that's the continuum. And if the city can help with all of those, then we can assist in this housing crisis. I will call it a crisis.
Yeah.
It is a crisis in the aspect of there's so many people out there looking for affordable units. Now, let's look at the income of what someone would receive on, say, ODSP or OW. They might only get $900, $1,100, $1,300 depending on their situation. Per month, correct. And if you can't find an apartment for under $1,400,
Yeah.
we're in a crisis right there. They're
That's fair.
behind the 8 ball. There's never going to be a way to get out of that.
Right.
They're always going to be behind. That's not
Right.
including any food. If there's additional hydro with the apartment or transportation
Right.
or anything like that. So it is a crisis, and,
Okay.
and the city can help by donating the land, as I said. The city can also help in looking at different types of housing. Maybe we can look at tiny homes or using shipping containers
interesting
or
point.
trailers.
Okay.
I did put a motion forward to look into those things. There's a lot of municipalities that their current laws don't address them.
Okay.
So we have to put something in place to address them.
Right.
And that was part of our housing study of what we need to do is to look into those secondary suites, whether that's in your basement or the garage or
Yeah.
something else in your backyard. Those are things that the city could do, whether that's waiving permit fees or if there's development charges in certain instances. Those are different things that the city can also do.
Yeah. Okay, so you've convinced me. We'll call it a crisis. And you're not wrong. I have very close relationships with people who are in those situations and are struggling, and things are not getting easier for them right now. Gas increase of 18% coming down the line soon, which means that, rents are going to go up, because if it's an all-inclusive rental, well, that means that the owner is paying the bills, and he's going to have an increase, and he's going to want to pass that along, or she will want to pass it along. So yeah, I think I can get on board with that train of thought. We have seen the what you were speaking about in regards to having multiple units in a building and either removing permits or whatever we can do to help to generate more of that in the right areas. That I think is a very valid and valuable part of the solution right now, is that there's a lot of homes, a lot of properties that could have 2, 3 dwellings in them comfortably, appropriately, properly done to meet all regulations and all permits. And they're not, because it's really difficult to do in some areas, and it's really difficult for things to happen. So that's a very interesting point.
I just want to jump in there. I know that Niagara, not Niagara Falls, but Niagara is one of the highest populations of single-family homes.
Yeah.
We are overhoused in Niagara. I'll give you an example. I have a friend that lives on a nice cul-de-sac, and they're very, very large homes, and there was 8 homes and 9 people living in them. And they were 3,000 square foot homes or larger, and only 9 people living in them.
Yeah.
We are overhoused, and there's lots of different ideas within the world that different people come up with, like matching a student and a senior together. A senior is on a limited income, and they could use maybe the physical help of a student. The student is on a limited income because they're a student, but yet maybe they have the physicality to help with the chores. There's a program in Toronto
So
like
an
that.
offset there.
It's an offset, and there's all these different ideas, and there's no one solution. We really have to focus on lots of different things. That could be one of them, a matching program, whether that's a senior and a student, or just two people, working people, and you meet them and figure out if it's going to work, if your schedule is going to work with them. Do you like the person? And then an extension of that is some people are buying homes of not even knowing the people, and they will get together and figure out, do I like you? Do I want to spend the next 25 years with you in the home? And then there's also families pooling their resources together, whether that's brothers and sisters, parents and children, grandparents.
That's very common.
That's happening more and more as well.
Yeah, it's something that we are seeing it's becoming extremely common. It was common before, but it's becoming extremely common now, where you have multiple sets of family members purchasing into a property, whether it be for them all to move into, or, one part of the family is just using it as an investment vehicle. There's definitely a lot of different options there, and a lot of people are taking advantage of that. But that's a very interesting point about the matching system, in that, naturally, I think when we talk about things like urban sprawl, when we talk about overhousing, In my industry, the natural solution for us is to look at doing condo towns or, because we think of it more on a development scale. But that's an interesting point because it tells us that there's a lot of different solutions to the same problem.
Yes.
And that we don't have to always come at it from the same perspective and the same angle. That there's many different ways to tackle these issues.
Yes.
Which is why I think it's great we have people like you tackling these issues, because to your point about having different perspectives, naturally, because I'm in real estate, I look at it from, a development, a realtor perspective. And that's where that's where my basis of knowledge and information is coming from. And then you come at it from a completely different angle, something I didn't even think about. So I think that's incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something that you said earlier, just to clarify a point. Because I think it's important that we speak about this. You said that the city donated property to the region to help with transitioning. And that piqued my interest so that I can understand a little bit better about who takes care of what and how that works. Because I don't think I know much about that. And I like to think I'm a little bit in touch with how things work in Niagara. But then you said that, and I feel like I need to know more about that.
It's a very good question, and it's been very confusing over the past number of years. We are a two-tier municipality. We have the region, which is the upper tier, and then there's 12 municipalities, which are the lower tiers. The region is responsible for certain things, and the municipalities are responsible for certain things. One of the things that the region was normally responsible for was housing. And a lot of times the municipalities would say, when they were having issues or crises, saying it's not our mandate, it's the regions. And then the budgets would reflect that in the municipalities. We wouldn't have any money or any funding going towards these challenges or solutions. And it was always talk to the region, talk to the region. And with the housing crisis in the last few number of years, with the mental health crisis, addiction crisis, it has really brought it to us to say, these are our residents. And I have been pushing this from when I first got in almost 4 years ago, saying, these are our residents. We need to deal with this. And I think now that most municipalities are saying, yes, these are our residents. It was an upper tier responsibility before, but now because it is our residents, we do have to come up with solutions and help. And that's what most municipalities are doing. And every municipality does different things. It's just like, all different solutions if you bring them together, but everyone's working on something a little bit different. We were fortunate that we had some vacant land. We donated that. We were fortunate that the city had a building that we could donate for the bridge housing. So it does get a little bit confusing, and I think the role of the municipality has changed in the last little while because of the different challenges that are going on.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the time frames and the timing historically, but I know that in the past, maybe it was sometime in the late 70s or 80s, it was really like a provincial program that then at some point got downloaded to whether it be municipal or regional. I'm not exactly sure how that worked. Like you just explained.
I know part of it, so I'm just going to jump in there and tell you. My understanding was that the province was handling housing, and then when it got to be a municipal issue, the province was giving money to the different municipalities. And there was no rhyme or reason, there was no formula, they were just giving money to the different municipalities. And then as things increased, the municipalities got an increase. It was, let's say, a 2% increase every municipality. But if you look at, say, a municipality like Hamilton compared to a Niagara, the level, the amount of housing and homelessness in those two communities are very different. And if you actually work out the figures for the percentages of people on Ontario Works or ODSP in the Niagara region, we should be getting a certain percentage of those dollars. So technically, we should be getting a completely different amount, and Niagara is getting shortchanged on the amount that they should. And I have talked to the region, and we've talked to the member of provincial parliament to talk about this to see if we can get it changed. And it kind of sounds easy, let's change it, but there's only one pot of money. And if you take a certain amount away to give to another municipality to make it equal to what they should be getting, now you're removing that from another municipality. That would be removed away from a Hamilton, that would be removed away from, it was really interesting to look at those figures. So the percentages that are coming to each of the municipality is not based on the numbers or the need. It's just based on a number from many, many years ago, and it hasn't been adjusted.
Interesting. That's honestly mind-blowing.
It is.
That in 2022, that's how it's operating.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to get back into asking you some questions that are maybe not as heavy, but are definitely pertinent to what we're discussing. So the province released the Housing Affordability Task Force report in February. Can you tell us about some of the initiatives that are in that?
Yes. There were 55 recommendations, and some of them I agree with totally, and I see how they can help. And then some of them I think will be more challenging or are removing the rights away from our residents. So I'm going to go through some of them with you, and you can understand. They might be heavy, actually.
Okay.
The first one, one of the positives is that they want to intensify building density within the urban boundaries. And that's a great thing. We have a lot of empty lots. We really need to focus on the properties that we have. We can intensify that way. We can also intensify in building higher, multiple floors, that sort of thing. So that's one good thing. They want to intensify that. So that's good. The other one is they're legislating some timelines. Normally, when a developer comes to a city, they come with their pre-consultation, and by the time it actually comes to council for approval, it could be maybe 2 years. That's a long time.
That's a very long time.
What the provincial government has done in February with this report, they're not all implemented yet, but I think they will be because the provincial government just got back in. Is that they're going to say if this section is not done within a certain period of time, the city owes a rebate back to the developer.
Oh, that's
if the next level is not done by a certain number of days from the last time, the city owes a rebate back to the developer. So it's really putting pressure on the cities to streamline those processes. That's a good thing, and I'll talk about some of the negative parts about that later, but that's a good thing, which is speeding it up, because we are in a crisis and it's all about supply. If we don't have the housing, how are we going to house people? And that's one way to do it.
Right. So it's about expediting and efficiency.
Correct. Yes. Another one is when a developer would put in an application, they would give a letter of credit that if something went wrong, the city could cash in that letter of credit. Letter of credits are usually, it's like the developer used that money and cannot utilize that money anymore if they were going to leverage another part on the development or something else. And that really tied up a lot of the developers. This recommendation is called a pay-on-demand surety, and the provincial government is recommending that municipalities do that. If there is a problem, it's pay-on-demand. It's not like they've put the money ahead of time and that we can draw on the money. If there's an issue, then they pay for it. And a few council meetings ago, the city of Niagara Falls approved that, and it's going to be on a pilot program, and a developer could choose, do they want to do the letter of credit route or do they want to do the pay on the demand? That would release a lot of money that the developers could build more houses quicker.
Okay, but there's definitely a what's the other side to that?
Yes. The other side to that is there could be a risk to the municipality, and all of the research that our staff did, all the research that I did, and the pilot program show that there hasn't been any risk to this point. Hopefully there won't be any risk moving forward, and if there is, then we can address it at that point, but we are trying it on a pilot program.
Okay. What's an example of a potential risk? Like they start a project, they run into an issue with the phase one, laying the groundwork for it. There's something like a potential bill involved. and they decide to just kill the whole project.
Yes, could be something like that, or something wasn't built up to code and then they just stop.
Okay.
There could be a number of things.
Which does happen.
Which does happen. And again, that's not my expertise
Right.
in the building and the planning. We do have staff to help
There's a lot
us
of
with those.
conversation in my industry
There
about
there
that,
is, yes. And
about that specific topic.
yeah, so that's one of the recommendations. So I do see it positive in the sense that the developers could utilize the money that they have to build more houses, but this, from a city perspective, we need to be cautious and we need to be monitoring it and see how things are going. And if it is a challenge, then we need to address it at that time. Another one that we can look at is the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a developer or a resident does not like the decision that a city council gives on their proposal, their development, they can take it to the Ontario Land Tribunal to appeal it. And one of the benefits of this now with the new changes is that it will be an oral decision the day of the trial.
Oh,
Now it's been months, close to years,
Yeah.
to get that decision, and that ties everything up. It's slowing down getting housing to people. The developers can't start. It's definitely been a challenge. So that's one of the positive changes that they would like to make.
that's a really interesting point, because I know about the one in Port Weller. I was following that one closely, and it took a long time to
Yes.
get that one finished.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
Another positive recommendation is that the province was giving municipalities money to work on the backlog of applications. You could hire new staff to work on the backlogs, or you could use that money for software to help with the process. So when a developer comes into City Hall, they usually come with their great big drawings, and they need 4 or 5 copies to go to all the different departments. Well, now this software allows a developer to go right on a program and upload the drawings. They don't have to come into City Hall. Everything is electronically. It cuts down cost. It cuts down time.
Yeah.
And the city of Niagara Falls received $1 million from the provincial government, and we applied it to hiring new staff to work on that backlog and the new software program that the building and planning, everything could be done in a central location.
Interesting.
That's very helpful as well. Another thing that the provincial government wants to do is give more money to trades. We're really low on people who are working
Yes.
in the trades right now, and that's a direct effect of housing. If you can't find a drywaller, you can't find a bricklayer, you can't find a carpenter. So they're providing extra funding for that. That's one of the recommendations that will help get more supply as well.
That's incredibly valuable, because I can tell you, I'm 41, and when I was in school, high school, was right when all of the computer programming and processing jobs were hopping up. It was becoming a big deal. So everybody coming out of high school, that's kind of where we were being, I don't want to say pushed, but that's where we were being advised to go to, because at that point in time, you could not get a job in the trades.
Right.
There were so many tradespeople right in their prime career years that was not a job opportunity. And my whole generation, everybody I know, nobody got into the trades. Nobody went into it. And I come from a family where my parents were tradespeople, and we didn't follow in with them. And now we have this problem where there's not enough tradespeople, because my whole generation didn't get into it
Yes.
because of the change.
Yes.
So I keep talking to my son, who's in that next wave, that next generation, just graduated high school, about, trying to talk to him about the trades, because now it's a fantastic job.
It sure is, and it's very much needed.
Yeah, the job security is there, pay structure is there. The jobs, they're not the dirty, grungy, type of jobs that we used to hear about from our grandparents and parents. They're a lot better. So that's interesting. That would be really smart.
Yeah, that was a very positive recommendation. And I'll share one other positive one, and then I'll go through some of the ones that I think are challenges. The other recommendations were to reduce development charges, permit fees. That in itself is very helpful.
Yes.
Because we are a 2-tier government, they have to pay development charges and permit fees at the city of Niagara Falls and at the Niagara region.
Right.
There's 2 different levels that they have to pay. And then when you keep adding all of those charges, it's very high cost. And then the developer puts that onto the house, and then the resident has to pay for that.
Yes, and it elongates the process as well.
Yes. Some of the negatives about those recommendations, they would like to provide more land to develop. In theory, that sounds nice, but if you look at the opposite part of it, is it's taking away agricultural land that we need. It's putting some of the PSWs in challenging positions because they put the buffers close to the PSWs, and it's taking away some of the sustainable development that they want us to expand our urban boundaries and go out further. I'll talk a little bit more about urban boundaries in a few minutes, but those are some of the challenges. They want to provide more land, and especially in Niagara, we have this green belt, we have wine country, peaches, we have all of this beautiful agricultural, and some of the fear is that those will be used for housing. You know, there needs to be a balance, and we have to build the houses, but we have to think about what is the end effect going to be 20 years from now, 30 years from now. There's a few challenges there. The other thing that was interesting was it's called as of right. If you have a single family home, your right is to have a single family home zoned on that piece of property. What these recommendations want to allow is that you have a right to build up to 4 units on there. That kind of sounds okay to get more affordable housing and get more people in there. The challenge I find with that is that it's now as of right, which means it's not coming to city council. There's no notification to your neighbors. There's no discussion about the pros, the cons, or anything. It's just your right now that you can change that to 4 units instead of 1 single family home.
Okay, so let me just get this straight. So a while back, there was a house in the Kaler Road area, that Kaler Road, however you say it.
Kaler.
Yeah. I've heard it both ways, but and it had that on the front, like it was a big property, but it was a single family dwelling. I was on it, and it had that sign on the front, notice, for, you know, the community to be able to go to a meeting about it.
Exactly.
So you're saying that's getting removed
for single family properties that are zoned single family properties. It will be removed. And I'm a huge advocate in letting the public know, letting the public have an opportunity to talk about it, ask questions, voice their concerns. That sign will not be there. The owner of that property can just change it to 4 units, and there's no discussion. Council doesn't know about it. And I have a challenge with that. I understand what they want to do, that they want to go from 1 family to 4 families. I get that, but I'm really concerned about removing that notification and just giving that as of right.
Right. So there's pros and cons to that. I can tell you this. There will definitely be pushback from the not in my backyard people.
Yes.
Because, you know, one of the negatives, like obviously there's positives to it, that it will help with some of the shortfalls that we have in housing to provide more units, more properties, more dwellings. But the flip side is when you buy into certain neighborhoods, you buy into them for specific reasons. And one of them is the investment vehicle of the home because of the neighborhood. And if at any given time, somebody can just build a multiplex in that neighborhood that will dramatically affect the value of the properties around it, there's definitely going to be some upset and hurt feelings over that.
Yes.
That's going to be interesting.
Yes.
Okay. What's the next one?
Okay. The next one is they are removing or lessening the parking requirements. There are certain guidelines, say for 100-unit apartment building, how many parking spaces they need. And that's on, it's legislated through the Ontario Planning Act, and we follow them. When it comes to council, sometimes we can amend it a little bit, that maybe they don't have enough room to put that number of parking spaces. We can change it, that sort of thing. But what this recommendation wants to do is remove some totally, or go down so low that it doesn't make sense. My concern all the time for parking, if you don't have the proper amount of parking, someone needs to park somewhere. They go and park illegally in businesses. They park on the roads where they shouldn't be.
Okay.
The idea behind lessening that parking is they feel that people will take transit.
Right.
That's a great thought, but you have to look at where you are. Niagara Falls was 5 cities that amalgamated together. We stretch from one end of the city to the other end. Transit is very difficult. It might take you an hour to get somewhere with a couple of transfers. Some people might say ride your bike. They don't need a parking
Right.
space. Those are great ideas, but the reality shows that it doesn't work in all communities. And I'm afraid that if we cut those parking spaces, either remove them totally or cut them down to a low amount, that we will have other types of challenges.
Interesting. So I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Okay, that's what we're here for.
There's a lot of conversation, and I've spoken with some other city councilors in different cities like St. Catharines that are really big on the walkability scale right now,
Yes.
because we do have a robust system developing for transit in Niagara. There's been a lot of onboarding with that thought process, and all of the cities have come on board to having this. I don't know if centralized is the right word, but basically, allowing for somebody to travel from Southern Niagara to Northern Niagara on one system.
Amalgamated transit.
Okay, that's
that would supposed to happen next year, correct?
Right. And parking lots are bad in a lot of ways. So reducing the amount of parking spots in a building, within reason, obviously, there's definitely some positives to that, because it allows us to then eliminate some of the negative components of just having a lot of tarmac. And as our region grows, and it is growing rapidly, we are going to grow into a trend of walkability, of transit, and different opportunities of carpooling, things of that sort. So I'm not sure that I'm wholly against that. I can tell you from my industry that it is a component of a lot of builders that frustrates them, because they want to build properties that they believe are future-proofing our society, that are helping. They can put more trees in, they can put more green space in on a property on a smaller footprint if they can eliminate some of the blacktop.
Yes.
And so it's a balance, I guess, is the way to put it.
I think it has to be looked at as a site specific. Whatever's going on that site, let's at least have the conversation, because if you have this general rule, it doesn't fit everyone. I'll give you a good example.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In downtown Niagara Falls, because it's close to the train station, the Minister of Municipal Housing has a right to put in a minister's zoning order, an MZO. And they were allowed to change the amount of stories within an apartment building from 20 to 40, and they were allowed to remove the parking requirements.
Okay.
So think of Queen Street, and there was going to be a number of towers towards the river with no parking requirements. And the idea is that they're close to the GO station, they don't need parking. In theory, that would work, but realistically, in Niagara Falls, if you were down on Queen Street in the middle of winter, you can't ride your bike somewhere. You probably are not going to walk to some place. So in some places it doesn't make sense. And I'm just really concerned that if it's a blanket policy, it might not work for some areas, and it might work. And especially with the price of gas right now, we're talking about the price of gas. We're talking about the price of cars, electric vehicles, those types of things. So I'm just afraid that if we remove it, we can still end up having problems. But I do think it needs to be looked at a site by site. And that's when it comes to council. That's when we have those discussions about closeness to a bus, those types of things.
Yeah, I can definitely get on board with that way of thinking. I'm not a big proponent of painting whole sections with one brush. Whenever we do that in society with any issue, with any thought, with any design of anything, we definitely miss opportunities to be more efficient or have better efficacy in how we do it. So I can definitely get on board with that way of thinking.
Yes, good. You were mentioning about the neighborhood, that people invest in a neighborhood for that area, for what's going on, the character of the neighborhood. When we were looking at different building opportunities, one of the things would be the character of the neighborhood. And if it was a 5-story building in an area that had only one floor single family homes, you could say, well, that's not the character of the neighborhood. And that could be a consideration about not to put a development in an area. Well, one of the recommendations is you can't use that issue, that challenge, that concern anymore about the character of the neighborhood. And I'm a little concerned about that. Again, I think it's site specific. You should look at it. The other one on that was shadowing. if you have a tall building, there's a lot of math that goes to it, but if you have a tall building, the sun will cast a shadow. And if you have a resident on the other side of the building, the sun might cast the shadow on their property all day, and now they've lost the enjoyment of their property. That used to be a concern, an issue, a challenge that we could look at. That's now off of the table as well.
Interesting.
So those are some things. Again, you know, I'm here to represent the residents.
Right.
I always want the residents to have a voice, but it just seems that we're removing some of the opportunities for residents to tell us their concerns.
Yeah.
So that was another one. This one's an interesting one. I talked about the Ontario Land Tribunal, that if the person, a resident, the developer did not agree with the municipal decision, that you could go to the Ontario Land Tribunal. There was no cost to it before. There might have been a small fee to file the paperwork, but there was no cost. You could get a lawyer. You didn't have to have a lawyer, but that was the process. Now, under these new recommendations, the fee is $10,000.
Oh.
And
that's prohibitive.
That is very prohibitive. And again, it goes back to my advocation of letting people express themselves, being informed, being notified, and that could be very challenging. And I'll give you an example. We had a development on River Road that was going to be 2 very large towers, and there were a lot of residents in that area that were very concerned. They took it to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Actually, the developer took it to the Ontario Land Tribunal because we denied the application. They took it to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but under this new system, the residents would have had to pay $10,000 in order to appeal it.
And they wouldn't have had a voice in that case.
Exactly.
Somebody would have to be incredibly passionate about their perspective to want to pay $10,000.
Yes. And another one of the recommendations is limiting public meetings. Under the Ontario Planning Act, there's a certain number of meetings that are statutory that you have to have. They're very minimal. A lot of municipalities will have extra public meetings to give an opportunity to the residents to express their opinion. Now they'll be limiting that. And again, you know, I'm advocating for the residents that they're notified, they have the opportunity to give their concerns.
I mean, we all have, and I guess that is equitable rights, is what it comes down to, is everybody should have an equitable right to their voice and their say. If my neighbor wants to build a 5-plex, you know, right beside me, I should at least have a voice in that and how it works, to understand the process and be part of it.
Under the Ontario Planning Act, there's a certain number of meters or feet that they would notify past the property. And then if it's a rural, there's a certain number. I'm sorry, I can't remember what, I think it's 150 meters or feet. I'm sorry, 150 for the, within the city. And then it was 150, I think, in rural. And a lot of the rural, you end up with huge parcels that the next person is 5 kilometers down the road, and they never got notified. I did bring up a motion to council to expand that. So now the city of Niagara Falls has expanded the notification process for those rural ones. We're still at the same in the city, but we have expanded it for the rural, and that makes notification a little bit easier for people.
Interesting.
Yeah. Another positive thing I was thinking was, these are the negative ones. The site plan, when a developer brings their proposal to the city, it's huge drawings and they have to go through and list everything that they're doing, or minor variances, they want to give that right to the staff, that it would not even come to council. Now, you know, you can think about, is that streamlining it? Is that a good idea? The issue with that is that the elected representatives are advocating for residents. If the paid staff, they don't know really what the residents want or don't want, they haven't had an opportunity, so they can make those decisions and it not even come to council.
Be contrary to the mandate that you've been given.
Yes.
Interesting. Not to mention, and I never want to assume the worst in people, but anytime that somebody is given an opportunity where they have an extreme level of power and a type of decision-making process, when there's a lot of money involved, there needs to be some balance and checks put in place.
Correct. Yes. And I feel that the easiest balance and checks is being transparent, open, accessible, and there to answer the questions. Yeah.
I agree with that.
The last one I'm going to cover is that they want to reduce the cost, which in theory, that sounds great, but what is going to end up happening is the municipality is going to be losing that revenue. The province will not be giving revenue back to replace it. The city will just be losing the revenue. And, you know, there's no clear guideline of exactly what they want to do or how much or what they're removing or reducing, but that's the idea, that they will reduce costs and then the revenue from the municipality will be decreased.
Yeah, so going back to the last point that we just made, not very clear, not very transparent.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are some of the recommendations.
Interesting. So we had some positives, we had some negatives. Moving into the next question. So the region and the province provide the municipality some targets of the number of houses to build by a certain date. Tell us about those targets and some of the challenges and how we can achieve the targets.
Okay, thank you for that question. In July of 2020, they say that Niagara Falls has approximately 97,000 residents. The target for 2051, which is basically 30 years, is going to be 142,000 people. So we go from 97,000 to 142,000. And then they say that from that, we should build an extra 20,000 units in those 30 years. Okay, we have a target. How are we going to achieve that? They will give us targets and say you need to build so many single family homes, you need to build so many apartments, so many condos, so many townhouses to come up with those 20,000. And that's a great guideline about what we really need to do. I've done a lot of research and attended a lot of planning meetings, and there's an argument out there. Remember I said that Niagara has a high population of single family homes? The single family homes right now have seniors in them or people towards their retirement years, and most of them will be moving out of their single family homes either to retirement homes, downsizing, or unfortunately them passing away. So at some point we're going to have a huge inventory of single family homes on the market because our baby boomers are all of the same age. All of these single family homes are going to come up. The theory is that maybe we don't need as many single family homes as we once thought because of those. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind. And this task force report that we just talked about, those recommendations, that's going to help us achieve those 20,000 units that we need to build to accommodate all of those people.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about being creative with secondary suites, those types of things, tiny homes, trailers, those are important things as well. And the other issue with that was urban boundary, urban sprawl. We did have a proposal.
It's a big topic lately.
It is. We did have a proposal coming to each of the municipalities to say, do you want to intensify within the urban boundaries, or do you want to expand your urban boundaries? Our council decided to expand the urban boundaries. I personally voted against it. I think we should be intensifying. We should have taller units. We should have fill in the ones that we have. There's a theory out there about urban boundary sprawl. If you don't have services out to a place, it takes a lot of money to get your water, your hydro out there. A lot of times the developers end up paying for that because that's within the proposal. And that's okay. It's paid for at that point. But everything has a time expiration. Your roads only last so long. Your bridges, your water pipes, they only last so long. At the end of that life, somebody now has to pay for that, and then that goes into the pool of expenses for all of the residents to pay for. The argument can be made that all of those new houses outside of the urban boundary now pay taxes, so now you have that pool of money coming in. You know, I think it needs to be a balance. The other challenge I have with expanding the urban boundaries, we start cutting down more trees. I'm a huge proponent of trying to preserve trees. I did bring up a motion for a private tree bylaw. Apparently, we don't have a tree bylaw here in Niagara Falls. They are in other communities. and we did approve a motion to bring the information back. There's another motion that I did provide is a tree canopy. A tree canopy is the crowns, the tops of the trees that touch. We don't really have an inventory of our trees. And that's one of the motions that I put forward, is to have this inventory so we can figure out what our tree canopy is.
Right.
They say that we're around about 17 or 18% of municipal trees, because we only know municipally. We don't have an inventory of private. We should be at 30%. And that affects our wildlife. It affects our carbon footprints.
Yeah.
It affects everything. We really need to work towards that, and I'm hoping that we can do that. Every time we expand, we're getting close to provincially significant wetlands, and they are being challenged or cut down. Or sometimes we say, oh, well, there'll be a buffer on the outside. A lot of times, PSWs don't survive with that buffer, because you have the PSW, we've put a little buffer around it, and then there's everything built around it, and then that PSW and the wildlife and the environment, it just can't survive.
Yeah.
So those are some of the challenges going outside of our urban boundaries.
Interesting. Okay, so I have one more question for you.
Yes.
So you mentioned sustainable development. Tell us a little bit what you mean by that.
I think sustainable development is a balance. Everything needs to be balanced. We are in a housing crisis. We need houses. We are in an environmental crisis. We have to save the planet. And there's certain things that we can do for both. And yes, we will have to give up some to get some of the others. But it needs to be a balance. We just can't keep cutting down trees and building houses and then plant trees the diameter of a quarter. We can't cut trees down that are 100 years old to put a little tree there. It has to be sustainable. I talked about the cost of the infrastructure. Is that sustainable by 25 years, 40 years from now, putting that cost on all of the taxpayers? Is that sustainable?
Right.
So to me, sustainable development is having that balance. Yes, we're going to have to make some choices that maybe we wouldn't want to, but we have to provide housing to people. It has to be affordable, but yet we have to keep our environment in a place that we're going to be able to live here, because if we just keep on cutting it down and putting up a parking lot, there's not going to be anything left.
Yeah, they wrote a song about that.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. We're in a situation where we definitely need to look at cooling our cities. We need to look at urban sprawl and how we can digest that issue in a forward-thinking manner. And I'm a big proponent of future-proofing society. So looking at ways to do that. And it includes research, and it includes data. So not having the data is definitely an issue when you're trying to do those things, to make sure that we're not just kicking the can down the road.
Right. There's two more things that the city can do. I did put a motion forward for green development standards, and that would go towards the development community to say, these are some of the standards that you have to adhere by when you're building the development, whether that's the type of material, whether that's certain grading for the environment, those types of things. And the other part of it is when we build as a city, when the city builds new buildings, that we are adhering to those standards as well. Right.
Well, Lori, I want to thank you very much for giving me your time today, because I learned a ton about not only how the city works, how a councillor works, that Niagara Falls doesn't work in wards, and I blew my intro, but overall, just how things work in the city of Niagara Falls and what kind of impact our city councillors have on that. So I want to say thank you for giving me the time today to go over these things, these issues, and educating me on that.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And if people are thinking that politics is not something that they want to get into, I do want to remind people that municipal politics is the closest thing to them. We take care of your roads, when you flush your toilet, seniors buildings and programs and parks and recreation. That's stuff that's the closest to you. And get involved, learn about the community, and voice your opinion.
Excellent point. So thank you everybody for joining us. And I just want to send out a final thank you to all of the viewers, listeners, and all of my clients for voting me the Diamond Award winner for the City of Niagara Falls in the Reader's Choice Awards. I am sincerely humbled that I was voted #1, and I'm incredibly grateful. So thank you everybody for that. And until next time.